Good morning, folks. Actually, it's not morning anymore, it's afternoon. But anyway, so I know I'd said I was going to try to do a review of a gig board or Stomp, and that was the intention because I thought they were going to work out for me. One of the other would be what I would go with as a digital pedal board. And I was also looking at doing a regular pedal board, but reality set in. I was looking at a regular pedal board, and the more I did it, the more I said, you know what, I'm going to spend too much money for what I'm doing and spend too much time playing around because I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that, I'm going to be swapping out pedals, bunch of money, a lot of time and hassle for what? Nothing crazy. The Stomp was attractive because of the size, the audio quality, and the general selection that Helix has, because if you remember correctly, the Stomp has everything, electronically speaking, effects speaking, that the larger units have. What it doesn't have is more than 6 slots, more than 6 blocks of DSP. And that became a real problem when I started looking at what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. It'd be enough day to day. My normal setup, assuming I did amp and cab sim separately, would be a driver boost, then the amp, then a delay, a reverb, a cab. This leaves 1 slot for whatever. I could add a chorus in there, I can add a compressor, I can add a different distortion. It leaves some flexibility. I can do an effects loop out to do a different pedal. For example, I could do an effects loop out to this, freeing up another slot because this does delay and reverb. This is a Wampler Ethereal, possibly my favorite pedal. I didn't know if I was going to like it. I've actually returned everything else I had gotten in terms of pedals. Kept this one because if I'm only going to have one pedal, this into a cab, I can pretty much be happy. But it takes a slot to do an effects loop on the Helix. So there's enough room, barely. There isn't enough room to do stereo effect with 2 amps, 2 cabs. That kind of flexibility just isn't there because there aren't enough DSP slots. And that's not a criticism of the Stomp. They shrank it down and it's half the money. So you had to give up something. And I just decided that as a primary unit, I wasn't willing to give up that much. So what you're looking at here is a Helix LT. I know you can barely see it, but it's an LT. I gave up the scribble strips and the heavier duty chassis. I'm using this at home, maybe some road trips, but not professionally gigging. It's not going in and out of clubs or locations. Sorry, my cat is on the floor causing trouble. So the reason this is still around, other than the fact that I love the fact that it's that little, is because as much as I could run a PA from this and do almost everything, it's not the same as running it through an amp into a cab. It's just not. Pretty much everybody that reviews these things and talks about doing that versus amps, one of the things that gets said is, it's not an amp in the room, you can tell the difference. And the reason for that is the speaker cabinets. They're different. This cheap-ass Bugera 112 TS, $160, less if you get one on sale or used, but it sounds better for guitar than almost any FR speaker short of $1,000. You can buy some high-end units. trying to remember the name of it. There's one that I saw a discussion of the other day that it sounded awesome, and the guy wasn't even reviewing it. He was doing a demonstration of some other stuff, and he said, you know, this thing really is that good, but it's $1,400 for a 1x12. Yeah, $1,400 for a 1x12 FR is great if you're a professional. I'm not a professional. Certainly, if you know you're in the world of you're buying, you know, beautiful Gibsons or vintage Strats and so on, hey, power to you. I'm trying to do this, I wouldn't say on a tight budget, but I'm trying not to pay a premium. I'm looking for things where I'm really getting my money's worth in actual use. So, Helix, and here's the secret. Here's why I'm doing this way. I'm doing the Helix to the return loop of the orange. Now, why am I doing that? Because this, and this isn't true of all of these. This is true of this particular model, sorry. I believe it's also true of the Microterror. The return loop feeds directly into their power amp, and their power amp is clean. Hi, cat. So the power amp is not controlled by any of this. So, you know, I've got 3 dials here. I've got volume, tone, gain. None of those affect my power amp at all. They are completely independent. They are 100% the preamp and some circuitry between the preamp and the power amp. So I've got, and let's face it, it's not 28 watts. It's way more power on that power amp. It's limited to 20 watts of output, because otherwise it wouldn't be that clean. At 20 watts, at max output, it's still perfectly clean power. It gives me that amp in the room feel. It lets me run from a computerized unit like this, because let's face it, a Helix, a Headrush, any of those, they're a computer. There's nothing analog at all about this other than these dials, and they're still digital in the end. So, really, cat? So it still gives you that amp in the room feel, and you've got, particularly with the Bugera, but you can get other units that are similar. For guitar, because remember, I'm only playing guitar. I'm not doing, this isn't a PA system. This isn't a whole band. This is the guitar. You don't need an FR. You don't. What you need is a flat speaker. You need something with a relatively neutral EQ, or an EQ in the general world you want to be in. If you really want a greenback kind of sound, go for it. What you're going to do is then modify how you're doing your signal chain to change that. If you've got a 1x12 with greenback, you know, a 25 watt greenback, and for this kind of setup, if you like the greenback sound, that's awesome. You can skip the cab sim. Go for it. So, much cheaper than a full-on pedal board. And when I change my mind, when I go, I want to try this, I want to try that, I want to put this here, I want to change my signal chain. A couple minutes at the computer, a couple minutes sitting fiddling around here, I got it. And I didn't lose what I had before. I can literally, new preset, go. Does it replace an amp in the room? Literally, like, you know, an actual plug in an amp to the cab with some pedals? In your heart and soul, I don't think so. But in terms of final sound, I think the key for the final sound, that amp in the room feel, I don't think it's the amp. I think it's the speakers. I think that full range, flat response speakers, no matter what cab sim you do, no matter what you do in here, don't sound the same. They don't feel the same. And I think the problem is that we're expecting a plastic bodied, basically DJ piece of equipment to sound like a wooden bodied piece of equipment. So they sound and feel different. I think that we get confused about what we're looking for when we argue about amp in the room, which is why I think that very expensive speaker, expensive cabinet, is worth that money if you can justify it to yourself. If that amount of money is reasonable for you, it makes sense because it is built like this. Much better, to be honest. I mean, this is a Bugera for 150 bucks. It's built like a nice speaker cabinet. Wood, fabric, leather. I mean, it's a nice piece of equipment. And it sounds it. But anyway, that's all I really wanted to say. I wanted to talk about the fact that I discovered there were limitations on the smaller units and what I ended up with. And I will say this, the gig board does not have quite the same limitation the Stomp does. It's a little more flexible. It probably would have worked just fine for me. What it didn't have was the selection of effects, amps, and cabs that matched me. It was a personal preference kind of thing. I really liked the interface. I liked the design. I wasn't thrilled with how they handled the signal chain. It just seemed counterintuitive to me, and that, give me a little time, I would have been fine with it. But I mean, personal preference. Certainly, there's nothing I am doing that somebody else couldn't do with a gig board for less money and less size. But I don't think I would have been as happy with it, so I went a different route. And sound quality, if you're using something that the Headrush has, and that's a tone that it's happy with, I had no problem with the sound quality. If you're an audiophile, if you can hear the little tiny details, maybe. I don't know. I can't hear it. I can't hear the difference. I can hear the difference between the two units in terms of the actual sound coming out at the other end. But it's not a quality difference. It's you're using different effects. It's like you said, well, does the Ethereal delay sound better than some other premium delay? I don't know. They sound different. Which one do you like better? So try it out. Doing this setup, the return loop thing, be careful what you're getting. I highly suggest something where it's got a good solid state power amp. That's all, folks. Have fun. Keep playing.